My name is Doug Stone. I play the tenor saxophone and teach jazz at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. I began playing music professionally as a teenager. One of the many enjoyable things about playing gigs is the wonderful hang that happens when musicians get together. Beyond Tenor Talk is an updated and expanded version of my original Tenor Talk podcast. Beyond Tenor Talk features conversations with great musicians who don't all play the tenor saxophone. The conversations are reminiscent of the hang shared by musicians before a gig, after a gig, and during breaks on a gig. I hope you all enjoy these conversations as much as I do. I am so thrilled today to have the opportunity to talk to one of my friends, one of my favorite musicians, and also a person who in many ways has been an inspiration to me. And so welcome to Beyond Tenor Talk, Marcus Evans.
Thank you so much, Douglas, and happy Juneteenth to you.
Yes, same to you. What a time period we're living in, and it's great to see that this particular day has received some notoriety of late, hopefully leading to positive movement in our society. And it's great to talk to you on this day too.
Thank you.
So I think it's usually with these, I just kind of start with, your musical history, where you grew up, where you went to school, and some of your influential teachers and stuff like that. So, of course, we met when you were doing your master's and I was finishing up my undergrad at NIU. So it might be cool to just have you kind of take us through your history up until your NIU days, and then we can kind of go from there and share some NIU stories. So
sure.
Maybe start there.
Okay, my musical beginnings. Well, I was one of those babies who came out beating on pots and pans. So when I was very young, my parents got me drum lessons around 5 years old. I went to the Irv Bates School of Percussion Instruments, where if you're from Gary, Indiana, and you're a drummer from the 80s, you probably went there too for drum lessons. Irv Bates was responsible for teaching a lot of us our rudiments and getting us started on the drum set. And
he would take students as young. You said you were 5?
I was 5. Yeah, I was
wow.
Kindergarten, the summer right before first grade. When my parents put me in the car one day and said, "We're going somewhere." Didn't know where. When I got there, it was my first drum lesson. Learned my double stroke roll and 5-stroke roll and 7-stroke roll, and got a practice pad and some homework.
Yeah.
So started there, and I also have an older sister who's 6 years older than me, who was taking piano lessons, and she played flute in the marching band. And I admired my sister's musicality in so many ways. I also wanted to take piano lessons, which I started at second grade, and a lot of the music that I'd hear listening to, a lot of the soul and R&B records that my sister listened to ended up really impacting my musical taste as well. So there was piano lessons and drum lessons in elementary school. I was involved in school band in middle school and high school. And around the 8th grade, I met a good friend, my buddy Michael Shell, who was an awesome gospel drummer. He played in church, and even though he did not have the rudimental background or the piano lessons, he just had something natural that would blow me away. And that was the beginning of my really wanting to get a drum set and start to learn it, even though I had dabbled with playing in church in elementary school. I was not that monster gospel musician, and I did not have those drum set chops. So Christmas ninth grade, I got my first drum set, and that's when I started to buy Modern Drummer magazine and check out all of the drum nerd videos. Dave Weckl, Dennis Chambers, Steve
Right.
Gadd, Billy Cobham, some of my heroes.
Yeah.
And closer to senior year in high school, a couple guys that I know. One I knew from elementary school, and another from church. Harold Wallace and DeAndre Schaefer both approached me, both Gary, young jazz musicians that are my age,
Okay.
and told me that they had an opportunity to perform at a jazz festival in Gary called Jazz in the Park, and asked me to join their group. And I said, of course. And that's when we started checking out Charlie Parker and Miles Davis, and I started learning some tunes so that I could play this gig. That was the beginning of my learning tunes. But then when I was a couple of years later, when I was a student at Hampton University in the jazz ensemble, we had an engagement at the Downbeat Jazz Festival at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. And Bobby Watson was there, and he did a clinic for the young players, and invited us on stage with him to play impressions. So by this time, I'm like 20 years old, and I'm pretty confident that I could play the drum set because I've been checking out Dave Weckl and Dennis Chambers. So I'm just ready to show Bobby Watson what I've got.
Okay.
So I get up there, and I play, a few choruses with whoever's taking a solo, and then this young kid comes up behind me and starts playing the cymbal. And I turn and look at him like, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, man, you're swinging, man. You sound good, but you mind if I get some? And it was E.J. Strickland.
Really?
E.J. Strickland when he was in the 11th grade. And he sat down and just he ripped me a new one. I was very humbling experience, to say the least. It was in that moment that I was very convinced that I didn't know anything about speaking that language. The way he was able to interact with people and punctuate their expressions and make suggestions and just keep the music moving forward just blew me away. And it was in that moment that I really wanted to understand how to speak the language more than I wanted to be virtuosic on my instrument or have a whole lot of solo chops. I wanted to know how to communicate with people on stage the way he was. And that's been my mission. That's been my draw to this music ever since. More than just being a great player, I want to be a great collective improviser and an accompanist.
Marcus, I want to stop you there because there's a bunch of stuff I want to unpack here. So I don't want to lose anything, but I'm going to try to go back I want to actually start with a couple early things. And I really want to get to this comment you just talked about with E.J. Strickland and how that affected your playing.
Sure.
First question is, with your percussion lessons. So, when you started, and you said you didn't really start playing drum sets seriously until almost the end of high school, right?
Right. Correct.
So were you were just feeling and practicing in terms of being an all-around percussionist? You were playing snare drum, you were playing, mallet percussion and all that sort of thing, or
I didn't start playing mallet percussion.
Kind of
marching band, yeah. When growing up, me and all my drum friends were huge marching band nerds. We all wanted to go to a historically black college and be in a marching band. Me and all my buddies, we were fans of Jackson State University, Sonic Boom of the South, marching band, and other bands like that, Southern University and Florida A&M.
Right.
We were marching band nerds.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that I really wanted to get into the drum set.
I just got to touch on a little bit of that too. I've been thinking, probably over the last almost 2-3 years, I think part of it is being here in Baton Rouge. at LSU and, being next door to Southern, and then seeing some things that our teacher, Ron Carter, posted about Bethune-Cookman and his time in the marching band there. And then there was a documentary which may have followed Bethune-Cookman on Netflix. Did you see that? I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to put it in the show notes.
I do know what you're talking about, and I have seen a few episodes.
I can't remember the name. So that was really fascinating to watch. And then also just over the last couple of days, a few months ago, I heard an NPR story about the Beyonce Coachella performance with, kind of that HBCU marching band flavor to it, And so I've been checking that out. So I've been thinking about it. And then I've also talked to both Dyron Holloway and Jarrett Scheel over the last week. And of course, they were very heavily involved in the FAMU band. That's the Marching 100, right? That's what they go by. The 100. Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think that, even there was, prior to that, I think there was like Drumline, right? Like over the last maybe 10 years, there's been kind of a focus on that. And I can see how that would really draw people in, I think, drum corps is kind of a similar draw for percussionists and brass players as well, that I've seen. So yeah, what a cool tradition and culture, and just the excitement of doing that. I can totally identify with that. Now, I would have never, marching band was definitely not my thing, that would have never been something I was thinking about or interested in. But I can totally see the draw. And I definitely want to talk a little bit about your time at Hampton. But that's good. That helps me to kind of clarify where you were coming from. And then that, so the next thing is the end. So it's the end of high school and you're getting into jazz, but clearly by what you just said, you were playing in the jazz ensemble at Hampton. So was your choice on Hampton, was that based on the marching band situation? You felt like that would be a good fit for you? Also, what was your major there? Did you do music ed? Did you do music performance? Was there a jazz major? So maybe just tell me about the process and evolution of how you ended up deciding on Hampton and then what you were studying there.
Okay, well, by the time I was ready to graduate from high school, I knew I wanted to major in jazz. And when I graduated in 93, I actually went to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana for 3 semesters.
I might remember this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, my major technically was jazz while I was there, but I did not participate in any of the ensembles because I was underinformed. I had a very difficult experience at IU. There were a lot of orientation programs and things leading up to the start of classes that I missed out on because I didn't get information in the mail. And when I would go to the School of Music as an overwhelmed young student and ask questions, people would say, well, someone will get in contact with you. Someone will let you know. And I would be misinformed. And then by the time I found out what was going on, I'd missed auditions, and I had a crummy experience at Indiana University. And it was culture shock and on a few levels. But the 3 semesters I was there, I was in an opera playing triangle on 4 out of 27 songs for the first semester. And the other 2 semesters there, I was in a concert band type of situation. So I never got to play any jazz while I was there.
Okay.
And so and then I came back home for a while and went to barber school and tried to figure out what I was going to do with myself. And then the band director at Hampton offered me.
Sorry to interrupt. Were you playing gigs during that time as well? Like when maybe
just
not
a little bit
Bloomington, but okay, cool.
Around Gary, every once in a while I'd get something around Northwest Indiana, just a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I got in contact with the band director at Hampton, and he offered me a little scholarship money to be in the marching band. And I had some friends from Gary who went to Hampton the same time I went to Indiana University. And they were coming back home stronger musicians every semester.
Yeah.
Right now I'm thinking about my good friend DeAndre Schaefer. He's a killer on trumpet, and he's also a producer. He plays keys. He's doing quite a bit of production work, but he's out in DC now. Shout out to DeAndre Schaefer. But he would come home every semester stronger on the trumpet and playing better piano. And I was just like, wow, maybe I should get to Hampton and get some of what he's getting. And I knew that he was a jazz studies major.
Okay.
So when I got to Hampton and went to my advisor and told him that I wanted to be a jazz studies major, he kind of made a ooh, yikes face. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are you making that face? Mr. Smart, the band director here, knows that I'm here to major in jazz studies. Why are you making this face? Well, they just phased out the jazz studies program. It can be music performance, or music education, or music engineering technology. So I'm like, well, I didn't want to just throw away my whole experience. I was there, and it was my second opportunity to go to college. So I made the best of it. I majored in music performance, and I participated in every ensemble that I could. And at a school like Hampton, they will keep you quite busy. Right. Yeah, I was in everything. Marching. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just think that one of the things that came to my mind is that it's an interesting thing how there are these schools that work, these big jazz schools that work for certain people, right? Work for maybe a certain type of people, a person, a certain type of musician. Maybe they're even geared that way a little bit, And LSU, for instance, is not a huge jazz program. I mean, my friend David Detweiler teaches at Florida State. He's got a studio of about 20 jazz saxophone majors, and our situation is much smaller. But the students that are here at LSU, I feel like we give them very individual attention. There's 3-4 of us working with these jazz students. We know they're playing. We give them very individual attention. Like you said, we keep them busy. Like, you are going to be playing in a big band. You are going to be playing in a combo, period. Like, that is happening at the minimum, and so maybe, even in terms of Hampton, that would have not been a school that would have been placed on your radar in terms of jazz,
Probably
but then
not.
you see people coming back and learning and growing. And sometimes it might not even matter. Now, you might have a thought on this or two, but it might not even matter that you didn't have a jazz studies degree per se, if the people at the school are working with you individually and helping you and focused on you in your growth. Now, did the fact that there was no jazz studies there, did that mean you didn't have a private jazz drum set teacher to work with? Like, what was the implications of that you felt?
I did not have a private jazz drum set teacher to work with, not even at NIU. The teachers that my percussion instructors at Hampton are all really good guys. Seemed to be convinced before even really hearing me play that they didn't have much to offer me on the drum set. That really wasn't their background, but they would do everything they could to get me ready for my junior comprehensive exams and my senior honors recital, which they did.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think that there was at Hampton, there were still people who were finishing up their jazz degrees. The remnants of the jazz majors was still there. There was still a community of students who played jazz. So I still had, I think I learned a lot just from hanging around people and having them hit me to what records I should be listening to.
Amen.
And getting to play some tunes sometimes. And we drive up to Richmond and hit jam session. I learned a lot from the students I was hanging with that were into the music.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found that at NIU too, man, and I think a lot of us, especially those of us who did the undergrad there, I mean, the education was just as much at 504 John Street as it was in the music building, you know?
Yeah, man.
And so the next thing, when you were talking about this experience with E.J. Strickland, okay, I have been, we have a recording that we did. You know, we just did our gig our 2 gigs in February in Peoria, and we recorded. So this can be a plug for our record too. We're working on mixing and mastering this recording we did. We just did a live recording, and I want to point out a couple of things, and then I want you to go more into depth, maybe in terms of your concept of this. You already really hit the meat of it, but. Couple of things about listening to these recordings and thinking about your playing. So, first of all, I felt like playing with you and Alex Austin as and of course Larry's great and part of the rhythm section too, but that bass drum team, that's a very important thing,
Indeed,
and
yes.
playing with that feeling, it just immediately, even though we hadn't played in 17 years, it just immediately felt like home to me from our time at NIU and that quarter note and how we think about rhythm in terms of our experience with Carter and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that feeling. Second of all, as I listen to the tracks, I just keep thinking last night I played a little concert, a live stream concert, and I was thinking about how important it is to not be a ball hog when you play music, when you play jazz.
True.
And when I listen back to the recordings, I think about, man, there's no ball hogs. Like all of us would probably I'm probably the worst offender, right? As the leader and the one who talks too much in general. But all of us are just happy to play tunes together. And I want to hear Larry blow, and I want to hear you guys play your quarter notes and play your solos more than I want to hear what I have to say, And so you can hear that element coming across in your playing. The third thing that I just love, and this is my favorite comment about the whole thing, is that when Bill Duncan, our recording engineer, sent me the first track, I put it on. And my wife, Megan, who, of course, knew us, and we all, Megan and I grew up together. And, of course, we were all friends at NIU. Within halfway through the first chorus, she said, well, that's obviously what you recorded in Peoria because that's Alex and Marcus, and having not heard that for 17 years, it was not as, well, there we go. We're home. So I will say that for me, I never thought too much about chops until later, even when I was in my master's. I mean, I did my master's between the time I was 29 and 32. And I do think one of the things I gained from that was my chops improved, It's interesting for me to hear that you were first drawn to the chopsy drummers, and then this E.J. Strickland experience kind of changed that. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about that and what that transformation meant to you and how you implement that in the way that you play now?
Okay. Well, like you were saying, I was in high school, I was into the fusion guys, all of the drum gods, the drum superheroes that were super chopsy. And I wasn't even checking out a lot of straight ahead guys. I'll even embarrass myself by saying, why do you need to listen to all the straight ahead guys? All they're doing is that same cymbal beat and a little bit of comping. I had that same silly thing. A lot of young drummers still. That mentality a lot of young drummers still seem to have. Like, it's just ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding. Why do I need to really immerse myself in so many albums with that?
What were can you list off like 3 or 4 of your favorite records at that time?
Okay. There was a John Scofield record with Dennis Chambers on it called Pick Hits Live. And there were a few Dennis. Anything with Dennis Chambers. Dennis Chambers was my guy at the time.
Okay.
There was a John McLaughlin record called Tokyo Live. That was John McLaughlin, Joey DeFrancesco, and Dennis. And I was listening to a lot of stuff like that, and I would feel like, Dennis can play everything, so why do I need to check out all these other cats? Right. And of course, Billy Dennis... Cobham, Spectrum, and all the classic fusion stuff.
Did Dennis Chambers play with the Brecker Brothers? Did Dennis Chambers play with the Brecker Brothers a little bit? Yeah.
He sure did. Yeah, I would check out videos with that too. Man, anything with Dennis.
Right.
Was my... Okay. He was everything. But fast forward to EJ Strickland.
Did you more thing? Did you see the Billy Cobham band when we were in Montreux? Did you go to that concert?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I'm sure that was cool for you.
Totally.
Having, had the early connection with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great to see Billy. He's a lot shorter than I thought he was. But anyway. But anyhow, he still beat me up.
Okay.
But EJ Strickland. So I'm watching EJ Strickland play at this Bobby Watson concert. And before this moment, I'm thinking in terms of chops. Even the comping stuff that drummers do when they're playing swinging music, I'm still calling all of it chops instead of really paying attention to what he's responding to when he plays that lick or the other things that are going on. I'm just soaking up what drummers are doing. But EJ gets on the drums during this tune, and and the trumpet player go da 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 da. He'll go, and then the EJ will be right behind him, like smack it, back out, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, wait a minute, they're doing something. Something is happening. Yeah. And it was just like, oh, goosebumps. And I wanted to learn how to do that. I wanted to learn how to dance and communicate with the people on stage, and the way he would just sit there and he knew where the spaces were going to be. He knew how the phrases were going to end and how to play something in those interims that would set up the next phrase. And then even when it seemed like the soloist was having a moment of writer's block, EJ might play something like "Try this," and then the horn player say, "Yeah, I will try that." And I was just like, man, this is magical. It's like some psychic magic stuff happening right now. And I wanted to understand that more than I want to be as good as any of my favorite badasses on drum. I wanted to understand that psychic magic thing that the best cats can do. And that's where it's at for me.
Did you immediately start listening to different records at that point? Like the way you're talking about this, well, first of all, I want to say I love your humility because the guy was like considerably younger than you. I love that humility. And of course,
it didn't matter. He was
right.
He was kicking my butt so thoroughly.
I know. But people have hangups, Marcus, and I think that this is a great example of that. That humility and approach to we're all on this trajectory of trying to learn music. Second thing is, it's interesting. It's almost like you talk about this as like more than just. Like this was a life-changing kind of experience in the way that you're referring to it. So,
totally.
Like, did you immediately like what did this do to your mind? Did you did you become obsessed with different kind of playing? Yeah, go ahead.
I started listening to my records differently. I had at the time my percussion instructor at Hampton was Mr. Sean Daniels, and I told him he was there at the Downbeat Festival with us, and he saw me walk off stage with my tail between my legs. Like, there, Marcus, it's going to be okay. But he was like, yeah, man, you got to listen to. He said, listen next time you go, listen to the John Coltrane Quartet. Listen to Elvin, what he's doing with Jimmy Garrison. Then go back and listen to what he's doing with McCoy Tyner. And then listen to what he's doing with John Coltrane. And I just started listening to records differently. I would just sit there and try to take in how he was responding and when he was responding, when he was just laying down the beat and when he was actually interacting and responding. It just made me listen to records differently. So now a lot of comping vocabulary comes from just knowing where something is supposed to go, as opposed to having transcribed a bunch of things.
Yeah.
You just kind of feel where something needs to be, you know?
Yeah. I'm also going to keep us here for a minute too, because I've been thinking about something else lately, which in my conversation that I just released on this podcast with David, again, a friend of mine, David Detweiler, who we were at Eastman together, and he teaches saxophone at Florida State now. We got really deep into our experience with listening to records and how we approached that in the 90s and early 2000s, and the shift to Spotify, maybe YouTube, various streaming things. And, you mentioned a couple key elements that I think, maybe have kind of fallen out of the conversation, at least that I've heard recently. First of all, I used to issue a challenge to my high school students when I taught in Rochester to, first of all, buy a CD. Now, I would say if I had a class of 30 kids, probably 15 of them at least would raise their hand and say they owned a CD. So I thought that was great, And then I would recommend different CDs to people, but I would say, buy the real CD and sit down like you're going to watch TV, but put the CD on and just listen to it, instead, not even walking around with your headphones, And then, this idea of what you just talked about, multiple listenings of, for you as a drummer, of course, thinking about what is the drummer doing with each person, and for whatever other instrument we're talking about, doing the same thing. And, I remember, and I still try to do this, but, for I think younger people today, the days are gone of having that 1 or 2 CDs in your car or 1 or 2 tapes in your car, and you forget to bring a new CD out, and you got a long trip, and so you listen to A Love Supreme.
Listen to those lots and lots of times.
Right. And that experience is so valuable, and it's missing. I just actually ordered some CDs, because I'm like, this is so dumb. Why am I not also in this quarantine situation? I had some CDs in my car, and it gets hot down here anyway. So I brought them inside, I reorganized everything, and I'm putting CDs on. If I'm in the living room, man, I'm trying to put a CD on to actually listen to a CD, So I just love thinking about that listening, and how important that deep listening is,
Yeah, and cats still do that. I remember back in the NIU days, you'd be like, man, you should come by and we'll check out some sides. And that's what we would do. Those would be the major hangs. Hours of sitting there listening to records.
And so I'm glad we're working
them
towards this. Yeah. Oh, man, I just have so many memories of such fun experiences. See, I started driving up to NIU to hang and play gigs when Alex was there a year before me. And so I would go up and hang out at 504. And I remember sitting there one time with, I think Pete Zimmer was there, and maybe Pete Benson was there, and Ian Torres, and Don Tish and all these guys. And I just remember sitting in this big circle listening to Nippon Soul, that record, Cannonball record. And it's that one track where they come to the top of the chorus every time, and it's a hit, and then it gets soft. And I just remember somebody kept running that back. Like, no, we're going to listen to that track again. We're going to listen to that track again, and that's how you learn to think about music. Now, tell me about your transition and did you go straight from Hampton to NIU? How did you find out about NIU? You came with us to Europe before you were even a student at NIU. So just tell me about that whole experience.
Sure. Okay. Well, there are a cluster of historically black colleges on the East Coast that are affiliated with the music organization called the IMA, the Intercollegiate Music Association. And every year they have a conference where they will have an all-star choir, orchestra, concert band, and jazz band that are comprised of students from various participating schools in the IMA. And my sophomore year at Hampton, I was chosen to be in the jazz ensemble, and Carter was the guest director of the IMA jazz ensemble that year. And he stopped the band after a tune, and he said, "You're gonna be a hell of a drummer one day. You if you want to go to graduate school, you get in contact with me." So
wow. Awesome.
After I graduated, in my senior year at Hampton, I became a father. Had my son Xavier, and although I had dreams of going to New York and really trying to be a cat and living the what we call the dream life, I didn't want to be one of these parents who visits their child every summer or every other holiday. I wanted to be close. So I just kind of figured that maybe I'll just, maybe drums will all be my personal passion and hobby while I do whatever I have to do to take care of my son. And I started working at a call center, doing customer service for UPS. And at 2 or 3 days into training for this little job I was doing, the trainer said, "Well, what we're going to do in training today is outline your career path." And I laughed out loud. And because I thought it was a joke, like, this is just a little job. This is not a career. Yeah. But I was the only one laughing, and I kind of looked around and I said, "Oh, quiet." And she outlined how after you pay your dues and work your way up the ropes, you'll get to be in the big office where they make $13 an hour after you achieve all of this. And I was like, "Is she serious?" And I'm laughing at stuff like this, but nobody else was laughing. So I wrote Carter an email that day, like, "Yeah, that thing you said about graduate school."
That was the day. Yeah.
Do you remember me?
Yeah.
And so even though I wanted to be super close to my son, I also decided to show him that you can be and do whatever you put your mind to.
Amen.
And I went after the music and then went and got my son and raised him up. And now he's 20. Yeah. And he's an artist and he's working and doing his art, and he's well, and I'm still trying to figure out how to play these drums.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is the proximity of Was your son in Gary?
Well, he was still in Virginia my first year at NIU, but then he moved he was in Gary with my parents after that, and I was doing quite a bit of commuting back and forth.
Right. But NIU was a reason. I mean, I guess, what does that come out to? 3 hours or 2 hours to get back to Gary from DeKalb?
About two. Yeah, about two.
So it was reasonable to get back and forth.
It wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
No,
better than New York City.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah. So did you end up with a year in between the finishing up at Hampton and starting at NIU?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a year in between.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think, were we the first Liberace jazz tech?
The very first. Yep, that was us.
So you were able to come in. That was kind of your assistantship or your scholarship, right? Was to play in that group?
Correct.
And then the jazz ensemble. Was the jazz ensemble also part of that, or was that still an auditioned thing? Or were you assigned the jazz ensemble?
No, I auditioned. The only thing that the only obligation for my assistantship was the Liberace graduate combo. I auditioned. I wanted to be in Carter's band. I had to give it a shot.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, Marcus, I'm looking at this picture on my wall. I did a little Instagram Live. Megan, my wife, made a nice gallery on my wall here in my studio at home. And right in the middle, we have our picture of us in February in Peoria. And then down on the side, we have a picture of us with Carter and Josh Sirheinrich and Danny Campbell and you and Alex and me, which was the Liberace combo, and that would have been 2001 and 2, right? And 2002 and 2003. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this was the first one. So we changed personnel a little bit. And so with that group, we recorded a record, and several years later when I was at the Eastman School, there was a trumpet player auditioning, and he came and sat down next to me and he said, I know, are you Doug Stone from the Liberace Jazz record? And I said, well, yeah. How do you know that? So that record had a little traction, Marcus. There were some people that checked it out. And we all contributed compositions, and we got to travel. We went to California for like a week, I think, right? Playing gigs and doing some
we played the JVC Jazz Festival.
That's right. Yeah.
Bryant Park.
Yeah. That's right.
Got to do some cool things from that Liberace recording.
Yeah.
Years later, I met a trumpet player that also went to NIU after us, Quentin Coxum. He came and sat in. Oh, yeah, that's my guy. But he came and sat in on a gig I was playing, and he was like, man, when I was in high school, that one tune on the Liberace Jazz Tet CD, man, I used to play that on repeat. I said, is that right? You want to be in my band?
Yeah.
Insta-friend.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Made my
that's
day.
so cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should see if we can get some of those pressed again, man. Do you have a copy still?
I think I do. I'm sure I could dig it up.
Wow.
I'm sure I could dig it up.
That's awesome. Okay. So a few more things I want to touch on. One is what things stand out to you from your NIU experience? Was there anything that was transformational for you as a musician, as a drummer specifically? Like anything that stands out to you from that time?
Oh, man. That whole time stands out.
Really?
How can I answer this question? Unless you come from a town or city that has a strong art community, or you have parents who are jazz lovers, or any of the circumstances that could set you up to prepare you to start to learn how to play the music. A lot of us, unless you're from one of those kind of places, you're probably from a place like me where the elders don't encourage the art as much as more pragmatic approaches to keeping yourself stable. The elders look at music and art like that's a hobby, that's not a job. And when I was growing up and would tell people, I want to travel the world and play music, they'd say, well, realistically, though, what would you like to do? No, that is what I want to do. So it took a long time for me to convince myself that it was not a pipe dream and that it was possible to have a career in this music.
Attention saxophone players. I want to connect you with Jack Finucane and the Boston Sax Shop. Jack is a world-renowned saxophone technician. He has also designed specialty reeds, reed cases, ligatures, neck straps, necks, and saxophone cases. Jack's work and his saxophone gear will change your playing and probably even your life. I encourage you to make a special trip to my website, DougStoneJazz.com, and click on the link to the Boston Sax Shop store. You will be glad you did.
Okay, so when I got to NIU, it was the first time I'd have been around so many great young players who had similar aspirations to learn how to play this music and to make a life out of it. Before that, I think that it wasn't uncommon for a lot of people who grow up with parents like mine and elders like the elders in my community to hear that arts-related endeavors are hobbies. Those aren't real jobs. So it took a while for me to convince myself that this is something that I could really make a life of. And in that way, NIU will always be very special to me. It's a very pivotal time of life for me.
That's awesome. It's interesting to me. I've had so many relationships with this concept that you're talking about in my life. One, when I was a kid in Peoria, it was the complete opposite. Like, I played the saxophone kind of well. So everybody said, this is what you do. You are going to do this. You're going to make a living doing this. Almost to the point, Marcus, that I kind of wish people would have helped me to be more balanced, that my teachers and parents would have, But the thing is, I think sometimes people get sports and music confused, So like being and of course even the same thing in sports, but I was the all-state tenor saxophone player in the highest jazz combo for 2 years at All-State. And so in the minds of all the teachers and parents, you are the cat's meow, like you're gonna be the next Kenny G, and so in that time period, it was the opposite experience I had of you. And then I have had sometimes, especially with friends who've gone on to teach college and stuff, people say, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea to encourage people to go into the arts, or to give them the false impression that this is an easy way to make a life or whatever. Then I taught at a school in Rochester where, there was a lot of poverty there. And if some of the good musicians at that school would like have a church gig, teach private lessons, play in a cover band, and do some recording, they would easily maybe make double of what their parents were making in a year, literally, And so then I'm in a situation where I'm kind of like, yeah, we need to go for this, guys. If you can be creative and organized, let's set you up to do this professionally. And of course, now I'm back in the college world, but I feel like there is just an inherent value to the arts. And sometimes I think even if you do end up having to find other means of having income, it's still worth it to devote your life to trying to play music, and especially jazz, because there's so much depth and detail.
Sure.
I want to pull out another piece of this. I also talked with Larry Brown recently, and he kind of expressed similar sentiments to you, as you're expressing here, about the community of players at NIU. He was after us, several years, really, I think. But for him, he also had not been, like, you had the experience of going to the HBCU. But for Larry, he went to SIUE, so it was he really felt a strong bit of inspiration coming from the diversity that we had at NIU. And of course, sadly, I think if you look at a lot of college bands around the country, you don't see the kind of racially mixed bands that we had at NIU. And I credit Carter for doing the work there, to make that happen. And I just treasure that so much, and I was fortunate to always be mentored and play with and learn from and be friends with, a lot of black folks in Peoria growing up and in the south suburbs of Chicago and that. So I was fortunate to have that as part of my community, but as I've looked around and as I've experienced, programs, like, that was a unique thing at NIU, which I don't think I fully appreciated it at the time, So, man, that's great. And we were doing it, I think, I'm looking at that picture of the band, Marcus, and all of us are playing professionally and doing, different things. We talked about Josh Sir Heinrich, doing his thing. And was Nimmer did Nimmer do that for maybe a semester or something with us as well after Sir Heinrich?
Yeah. Nimmer was there for about a semester before he moved to New York.
Who played piano after that? Or it was Nick Fryer. Maybe we didn't have a piano player. We just left it with Nick. Does that sound right?
In
that
combo,
second year?
yes. But
yeah,
I'm wondering who played in jazz ensemble. Now that you mention
it was Joe Kroll.
Right. Okay.
Because
Right.
Carter tended to take two people, except on, well, guitar and bass he didn't, but I remember there being two piano players usually. Oh, you know what? British Moore
Right.
was there too. Maybe that wasn't when you were, yeah, that was when you were there. Oh, no, yeah.
I don't think she was in
Well,
jazz
anyway,
ensemble, no. But anyhow, yeah.
I think she did a couple of tours. But anyway, yeah, there was always, kind of a relatively deep bench, I feel like, especially for rhythm section. So if we go through, and that's the great thing, to your point, so many of those guys are doing amazing musical things now, full time. It was really a kind of a breeding ground for us to develop a vision of our future. Even though I always joke with my friends that, if you would have shown me a picture or a video of my life now, 20 years later, I wouldn't even recognize, 4 kids and living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but it's all built on that foundation of NIU for me,
Sure, yeah.
So at some point, I want to kind of touch on one other thing here, but at some point, I definitely want you to, give us your website, social media projects you're doing. But one thing I do want to talk about, especially today and with all that is going on in the world right now, we have had some very good conversations, and you've been one of my many friends who've been helpful to me as I think about and navigate issues of race, which have always been something that creates a feeling in the pit of my stomach, a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I talked to Dyron Holloway the other day, and I said, I remember watching that Spike Lee movie, Bamboozled, with him, and the effect that had on me. And so we're currently in a time where we're dealing with I guess these are things that I've always thought about, but they are much more front page news right now, in a lot of ways. But even prior to this, I've always loved the things that you share on Facebook. And that's one of the ways I feel like I connect with your thinking. We don't have time to sit down and hang out like we did for those 2 days in Peoria on a regular basis. Now, maybe we'll get this record out, and then we can book like a 4-week tour, to Europe or something. And then we'll be able to just hang all day. Sure. But, but until that point, I think that's a great way to connect. And it's been great to kind of get into your head and hear some of the things you're thinking about and that through that way. If you, I don't even know where to begin or what question to ask you, but what are some, can you just, and this is not something that is talking points or there can be a quick synopsis of, but what are some of the thoughts and feelings and things that are going through your mind? Is there any way to even express any of those things in a conversation like this at this time?
Well, here we are at this point in the conversation, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, where do I begin? First, I'll just say, I don't think that black people like being the spokespeople for black people when it comes to, how do you feel as a black person on these certain kinds of issues? Yeah, that often might that might get you an eye roll and a deep sigh and a here we go. But for the sake of education and we're having this conversation. Now I don't really know where to begin either. But the first thing that's coming to mind right now is how often it feels like as a black man, I have to show you that I'm not what you may, what your conception of me may be. I'm not. I feel like, I feel like there's a guilty until proven innocent type of thing going on with a lot of black people, where the assumption is that you are riffraff, or that you are, you know, uneducated and wild, feral, almost an animal, until you can prove that you are kind and you have humanity and you are intelligent and you are articulate. So I don't know if that makes, if that's clear, but yeah, a lot of times when people like me come around white people, we have to lead with a non-threatening spirit, put you at ease before we start to really show you who we are. And some of us don't ever really show you who we really are. We have to be kind and gentle and watch how we behave so that we don't make you uncomfortable.
Wow.
Yeah. And to that, I want to say that a lot of white Americans have problems hearing, you know, the word privilege or entitlement. But we live in a place where white people are in a position to determine whether or not your behavior is acceptable or not if you're not white. There are conversations going on about, you know, what's acceptable behavior and what's not. What's acceptable ways to express your grievances and which are inappropriate ways to express your grievances. Or why don't you come over here and show us that you're good? And you ought to be grateful that we are even taking the time to pay attention to you so that you can talk to us. And all of that is some weird privileged crap, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, black guy, come over here and talk to me. We're interested in you. You should be grateful that we're even interested enough to bother you. Now that we have bothered you, tell us about yourself so that we can determine whether or not you are an acceptable human. Prove it.
Yeah.
So, and if a person even feels like, if a black person even feels like being bothered with all that crap, then, you know, they will speak softly and be kind and show you that we are non-threatening. You don't have to be scared. We're not ignorant. We're not unintelligent. Wow. We aren't going to rob you. You don't be afraid. You know, yeah, it's like layers of crap to get past before you can even act like a regular person. Before you can act like a regular human being. And, you know, since all of this, since the George Floyd protests and uprisings have been taking shape, and a lot of people feel obligated to say, hey, look, you know, I'm one of the good ones. I've been seeing an awful lot of white people posting things like, you know what? I like black music. I make a living playing black music. And for that reason, I just want to say that Black Lives Matter, if none other. How about Black Lives Matter? Because this is human life. We should not have to explain to you to treat humans with humanity. You aren't doing us a favor. And this is not a political conversation. This is basic human rights, basic human life, basic humanity.
Yeah.
You are not one of the good ones just because you take the time to be interested in black people. We're talking about basic humanity. And if you don't get that, shame on you. Nobody should be having to explain that to you. Be a good human. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
But so often we have to lead. Black people have to lead with the, hey, don't be scared. You know, I'm not going to rob you. I'm not this thug you probably are used to seeing on TV. I'm not a pimp. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not a gangster. I'm a man, and I like music, and I like fun, and I like my family and good food, just like you.
Yeah.
So it's a damn shame that black people have to march in the streets and say, you know, my life matters too. You know?
Yeah.
I can go on, but I think you get my point. This is basic humanity. This should not have to be such a complex conversation. This is basic humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about that.
I appreciate that, Marcus. And, there's within that just several things to me. And I completely agree with the first comment you made in terms of the eye roll with a question, even having to ask a question like this, And the thing is, for me, like in this context, like where I can share this with people, whoever might be interested in this, I appreciate you entering into these kind of conversations with me, because I think for me, like I said earlier, there's always been a certain naivety. I mean, I'm aware of my privilege. I can walk into any situation and not have to justify my existence as a person, as a man,
Serious.
and I'm
Serious.
aware of that. But that, can you understand how that creates a blind spot for somebody like me, who has been around and been loved and welcomed by so many wonderful people who look like you? I can enjoy that and I can love those relationships, but I've never had to have the experience, that you just talked about. And so it creates a blind spot, I think, for me, and probably there's got to be other people like that in the world, And so,
blind spot.
Do you think that?
I do hear you. I do think that there are experiences that you wouldn't be privy to, or things you wouldn't have seen.
Right.
But I also think that this is something that people don't want to see. This is something that is so ugly to see that when people get a glimpse of it, you talked about that yucky feeling in the pit of your stomach.
Yeah.
This is a very awkward, ugly topic. And even like a couple of weeks ago, there's a drummer named Hillary Jones. You know this?
Yes,
heard of Hillary?
I saw this. Yeah.
All right.
Go.
So
Talk about it. Explain it. Yeah. Or I can, if you want.
No, we can both explain it. But But my experience with this particular, she posted something. She posted something very racist, to say the least, on her fan page, and told the person she was talking to, you can kiss her Anglo-Saxon ass if you don't like what she was saying. She went straight racial purity, Anglo-Saxon. She was straight up Heil Hitler. So I shared her post in a drummer Facebook group called Drummers from Around the Globe, and I said, "You see this? This isn't cool. Please tell your friends and your families that stuff like this isn't cool." And I got kicked out the group.
No way.
I got kicked out the group. I got blocked from the group.
Holy cow! Really?
Because there are a lot of people saying, "Wow, she's an asshole." But then there are a lot of, "Why are you talking about this here in a drummer group?" I said, "Well, she's a drummer, and she said this to another drummer.
Yeah.
And why not? Why not here? Can you do me a favor and please tell people that this isn't cool, because they'll listen to you. They won't listen to me."
Wow.
And then I had some straight up, well, I think she's right. I agree with what she said wholeheartedly, and some straight up really ignorant things directed towards me. But at the end of the day, I got blocked from the group. And even though she had said all the ugly things, people were irritated with me for talking about it. So it's kind of like when it comes to this kind of thing, people, it's there, hiding in plain sight, but it makes people so uncomfortable to talk about it that people are just kind of like, "Can we not talk about it?" Well, no, damn, we're going to talk about it. Because that little yucky feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when it comes up does not go away for us.
Right.
It does not go away ever. So, you're a little uncomfortable. Good. Man. Be uncomfortable. Yeah. Let me help you be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Let me make you more uncomfortable. Let me tell you about my day yesterday. How many, I saw a seminar where an activist, a white lady, asked her white audience, stand up if you would like to live with the conditions that black people live with.
Yeah,
and nobody
this is
stood
Jane
up.
Elliott. Yeah.
Yes, Jane. So it's like people aren't totally blind. They know that it's
True.
not cool. They know if
True.
if they had an option, they would not want these conditions. But they'd rather not talk about it. They might even tell you you're the problem if you bring it up because we don't want to talk about it. Yeah, well, we still, black people don't have the option of turning that off. And some ugly things are still happening all the time. So talk about it. Be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, you just express this stuff so well, man. And I agree. I've always felt like that there's this feeling in the pit of my stomach, but you're exactly right that I can be uncomfortable in entering into one of these conversations. And, I think my discomfort is that I don't want to offend black people. I don't want to offend my friends, these people who have taken care of me, by saying something that puts forward my ignorance. Does that make sense?
But I think that it's important to be genuine. And if there's some genuine ignorance there'll be some genuine light shed upon it. But while we're all pretending to be getting along when we really have internal things making us uncomfortable, I don't know if that is leading us towards a solution either. So,
right.
And the people like myself who know you well enough to know that you are genuine, will respond in kind, If you say something and I think is like, hey, Doug, let's talk about that. And then that's the conversation you and I will have. But,
right. And, that's a great point that gives me freedom too. And it makes me think about, I went over to NIU last April 2019. I did a little tour in Illinois, and Reggie Thomas is there. And he really encouraged me to come out and talk to his jazz pedagogy class. And after the class, we went out to lunch and we just talked about this stuff, for a couple hours. And he's another one of these people, just like you, who's understanding and knows who I am. I mean, he's known me since I was 12. He's been one of those great mentors to me. And the conversation is so helpful. And then it helps me then to have a way to express myself. One of the things I say is that white people say the racist stuff to me because I'm white. And they assume that's, this guy's white, so I can say my racist comments to him and it's going to be okay. And in those conversations, the more information I have to be able to express, the reality that you are experiencing every day of your life, that is really important for me, as I try to fight against these things. I had Dave Liebman come in one time, and I thought this could go really good, or all my kids could get cussed out by this guy, and my kids could handle getting cussed out. So it was fine. But I said, if Liebman asks you a question and you don't know the answer, the worst thing you can do is just sit there and stare like so many kids do, I said, you say, I don't know. And we practiced that, I'm going to ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, and I want you to say, I don't know, instead of just staring at me. And I think that's the same in this type of a situation, to be able to say, okay, I don't know. And like I've been thinking recently about times where we were at NIU. I remember one time the trumpet player Sean Johnson got pulled over, clearly was profiled, and he comes in and he says, this happened. And I was like, man, that sucks. I hate that. This is awful. But then I just go back to living my daily life, right? Because that's where I was. I was a 19-year-old kid. I wasn't thinking like I am now, 20 years later, like, okay, what can I do? How can I help? What little part can I play to, I don't know, bring that to light, fight against that? Us white guys need help with that, So I
can't call
Marcus,
it broke, but I do know that when you are around people having conversations that I'll never be privy to, and they're saying things that you can identify as out of line and racist, I would hope that you would say, "Hey, man, you sound like a dumbass," or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go even deeper,
Right on.
And get them into the conversation. Yes, they need to know they're a dumbass, but they also need to know why and how they need to fix that. Regardless of what they do with the information, at least you've given it to them. At least that's the role I can play.
I can dig that, and I will also own that it seems like an assumption to me, it's an assumption to me that you don't have to explain basic humanity to everybody. If someone is talking crazy about someone else based on prejudice or things that they really don't even know, just they're making generalized ignorant statements about people just because, from a place of privilege, from a place of America belongs to white people, and we're the ones who get to put a label on everybody and everything. And this is we can freely give you our opinions of everybody and everything. And if you don't like it, leave America because it's ours. Yeah, you sound like a dumbass.
Right. Yeah, period. Good point. And so, Marcus,
nobody should have to explain basic humanity to you. You know you sound like a dumbass. Come on.
That goes back to my old comment about the thing you once told me if anybody was messing with me.
And with anybody ever messes with you, do. And you give them this face and you tell their bitch ass.
That's right.
Shut your bitch ass up. It's so effective. Especially coming from you, I bet you it would really move mountains. I love you're normally a man of few words, Marcus. Like when we're just hanging out, you like in a hang situation, Marcus, you're like you play the drums like you hang, You are gonna wait until the simple thing needs to be said, and you'll say it, and then you just leave it go, Yeah. And so that is another good piece of inspiration for me to maybe sometimes just say, you know what? You're a dumbass. and period. Sentence over. Conversation stupid.
Over.
Yeah, you sound stupid. Yeah, that's all you need. That's all you need sometimes. Right. Like, come on, man. Yeah. Or just make a Marcus face at him like, really? Come on. Stop that shit.
I got it in my mind. Right.
Come on. What is
Marcus,
this bullshit you're doing? Cut it out.
This has been so great, man. I really, every little bit of this conversation has been so just wonderful and meaningful. And I want you to know that I value your friendship so much. And, we only had a short time to really be together in the same town, at NIU, and then we kind of took our own paths. And it's been great to reconnect. And even in that time, there is many wonderful things we did and a lot of inspiration that I gained from you, as with all of those friends at NIU and a lot of the places I've been. Thank you so much for doing this and for allowing me to kind of dig into some of this important stuff that I am really thankful that I can feature in this context. How about website, Facebook, Instagram, recordings that you have out? Can you just do a little Marcus Evans promo?
You know what? I wish I had a more substantial promo than I do. I've done the majority of my professional stuff has been as a side man. You can keep up with me and stay tuned to what I am doing on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well, but I don't use it very often.
Okay.
And there's no site. Link up with me on Facebook, and there will be projects forthcoming, and I will definitely make it known when they are.
Yeah.
There is an album that just came out under Stephen Buono But there is
I'm going to start trying to do show notes on this. So we'll just look it up and make sure we get the spelling and everything correct, especially with Stephen Bono. Yeah, that's great. And I just want to say that eventually, within the next few months, we will have a record coming out as well. And that'll be a great quartet record. I have no idea what direction we're going to take with it and if we'll do label or not, but we'll get that out there so that folks can hear your plan. Again, thanks a million, and I really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed some tenor talk.
Oh, yeah, man. Love you, Doug.
All right. Love you too, man. Thanks, Marcus.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for checking out Tenor Talk. Visit DougStoneJazz.com for more episodes. Follow Doug Stone Jazz Saxophone on Instagram and friend me on Facebook. Tenor talk to you later.